we have Safeway, Howard University, all of those, because when you look at faith, you have to look at how it blends in all of those different areas. We were able to, in the 2008, start an advisory board for the Department of Health. This advisory board then represents those faith leaders that we talk with once a month. And we came up with a memo or something that we can go out and say, this is what we stand for as far as a vision, and that is we connect people and resources to whole person health in mind, body, and spirit. A lot of the places of worship wanted to start a faith organization or faith ministry, but they didn't have the funds. So the Department of Health had funds that they were able to allocate to those different places of worship or organizations to be able to do that. As of to date, we have given over $100,000 in funds for organizations to be able to run their faith-based programs. And for is the members that we have so far, starting in 2008 all the way up to now, we have 45 members that have been with us from the day one. But as far as how many people we have reached so far is we have reached over, we have reached over 5,000 people each year. In our community days, we've had One in the Spirit. We have done town hall meetings. We have videos that we have a Facebook or a book page, as well as on DC Department of Health. We also have a page there. We have been able to, and I will be able to pass this out. This is what's called a report card, a community day report card, as well as I have a 10-year overview of all the work we have done since 2008. Just on last year, we collaborated with Councilmember Trayon White, and I'm very proud to be able to announce the work that we did at one community day. We had it at Anacostia Park, and that we were able to reach 1,599 residents at one time. We had 231 exhibitors, 130 volunteers, and we were able to pass out 500 school bags. It just goes on and on. But the great part of what we've done is we've been able to go into the different organizations. I forgot to say this. We represent Buddhist, Scientology, Muslim, Christian, the list goes on. So it's not just, as you will see on some of the cards, it's not just one religion. It's several different religions, several different organizations that have come together. And we have decided to have one common vision. The common vision is to help people to connect to resources that we're realizing that the Department of Health there's gaps. So there's gaps in a lot of different areas. When we addressed domestic violence on last year, and we took a stand in a lot of the places of worship. And if the faith leaders, if the imams, if the pastors, if those leaders then stand up and say, this is our stand, and we stand together, then we're able to do even more. And so these are the kind of things that we've had. We've had conferences where we've brought in national and international leaders to help to address whatever our theme is for that year. I don't want to prolong the time, but I do want you to be able to just look at the work that we have been doing and why we're doing and why we're continuing to do the work within the faith communities. We thought that at one time that just working with the faith community would be just a couple of years, but we realized that it is the foundation of so many organizations out there. And so on next year, we're taking it to the next level. We will be starting a podcast, and the podcast will then be featuring different faith organizations where they can then talk about some of the challenges that they're having if it's nothing more than how do the 7-day Adventists work with the Pentecostal. That's my father is a Pentecostal pastor. As you can tell, I'm easy to talk on this phone, on this microphone all day. But one of the things that we found out is that as we began to work together, we found that there was gaps for the seniors. So this year, with the community day, we had an area that focused in on seniors. So we provided them with Tai Chi, we provided them with yoga, we provided them with opportunities to be able to have free food, free vegetables and fruits, and have testing that was provided for them. So it was wellness testing that was provided for the seniors. But these are the type of things that we do. We go into the places of worship and we find the gaps, and we try to mend those gaps so that we all can work together as one. So that is my completion, and I do have information if you are interested. Once again, you can contact us at the Department of Health. I'm at regina.jefferson@dc.gov or 202-671-5063, or you can go to the Department of Health's website at dc.coab, P-O-W-A-B, @dc.gov. Thank you so much.
Regina, thank you very much for sharing that. We really appreciate that information. And so now we're going to go to our next presenter, Mr. Gary. He's going to talk about racial equity, building wealth.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for amazing, introduction to your business. I'm very proud that I'm in this panel with all these amazing people. So one of the things that I've been focusing on, and I've been serving the African community for the last 7 years, right? And in America today, we are having a serious challenge. Okay, our previous speaker, Ms. Rosina, said a lot of things about the faith and religion and all those things. I also have simple philosophy in life. God always comes first, right? Then you got to take care of your family. That's the second thing, right? Then number 3, you have to take care of yourself and your health, because you're the one who provides for the family. And the last thing you need to manage is what I call finances and the money, right? And when we talk about building the wealth, one of the things that I've noticed in the community is that people are not educated about simple ways how money works, right? So they don't understand how putting money aside for quite a long period of time, it create that compounding effect over the period. For a simple example, I've made an African family where husband and wife, they work very hard every single day. They have 9 kids, okay? They have 9 kids. They have no idea how they're gonna take care of those 9 kids. They have no life insurance coverage. They have no financial background. They were a complete mess. Then I was able to sit down with them and teach them and educate them exactly about how money works, how they can budget themselves into not only just providing the family the basic necessity, taking care of the kids, but also go over a little bit towards the future. Like if my kids one day they want to go to school and college, then I can provide that high level of education, because that's had been one of the dream for a lot of the parents, right? So when we talk about wealth building and equality, one of the things I realize is the people who are born here, or people who are here for a couple of generations already, they've been taught a lot of things, okay? They've been taught a lot of things about how the system works, how they can maximize the system in order to create that wealth for themselves. But as new immigrants coming in, I've been an immigrant myself, I've been in this country for the last 15 years. One of the things that I've noticed is when we come here, then we get into something what I call daily grind, right? You have to go to a job, you have to take care of the bills, you got to take care of your family, and people get into that grind for next 10, 20, 30 years, and then they realize that they didn't do any kind of financial planning. Mm-hmm. So in order for you to build the wealth, it's not like you need to make a lot of money, okay? You just need to know how exactly it works, and as long as you know how exactly it works, then the only factor now it plays is how disciplined are you, okay? How disciplined are you for your own future? How disciplined are you to put the money aside so you can take care of your families, right? And like I said earlier, okay, number one reason people file bankruptcy in the United States is because they get into some kind of illnesses, okay? It doesn't matter how healthy diet you eat, how much you exercise, you take care of yourself. The diseases, they don't look into who you are, right? And we are having that issues every single time. Every month, every week, I get messages on my social media platform, on emails about the GoFund, right? Hey, such and such person got sick. Hey, such and such person needs help, right? And just by simply educating them a little bit about like how it works and understand them, how they budget, and they can put themselves into a position where they are not like, putting a lot of money aside, but they are just learning how to discipline themselves to transfer this risk into, major insurance companies out there who can take care of them during those bad times, during those sick times, and they're going to be able to take care of their families, right? So when we talk about the immigrants and then the racism and also like the equality over here, I think the simple answer for all of those is a simple education. As long as we educate our people, and especially the young kids today, I love talking with the young kids because they're our future, okay? One of the reasons a lot of people are working so hard is we can provide next generation some tools, some weapons so they can defend themselves because believe it or not, in 2.5 months, we are about to finish the 2 decades of 21st century, okay? So my principle is very simple. If you are following something that is like 50 years ago, it ain't gonna work now, okay? It ain't gonna work because things have been changed, right? These kids nowadays, like they don't want to work for somebody. A lot of people, why they love going for Uber and Amazon driver is because what they have been preaching is you have to understand. They say like, you're not working for us, you're working for yourself, but you pick your own schedule, you pick your own hours, right? So we live in a very, very changing world. In 2.5 months, we're gonna finish the 2 decades of 21st century. So a lot of things that used to be true is no longer true anymore. So we have to make those changes and those adjustments, and just by simply educating people, okay, that's the most important thing, and empowering them that like, hey, you don't have to rely on anybody, you don't have to rely on the government, you don't have to rely on any politician, you don't have to rely on anybody. You can totally take control of your life, your financial and your future. As long as we empower them, then we can raise the community. Then we can dominate the United States of America by all the hardworking people. Because when I look through all the immigrants out there, all the African people, all the Asian people, what I see is hardworking people, but not getting paid enough. Hardworking people, but they're always struggling, right? And why is that? Lack of education, lack of empowerment. We have to focus on education and empowerment to our youths from now onwards, when they're in their 20s and 30s. So that way they can have a very fulfilled future. That's what I've been working for last 9 years. For last 7 years, I've been with African communities, and it's not a one-man's job. I can let you know, okay? And nobody wants to clean up the dirty laundry, okay? And that's why I encourage anybody who wants to be part of my team and help go out there, educate and empower a lot of families. Please feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to coach you, guide you, and help you to understand how exactly all these things work and how you can put a big, big, big impact in your community and your society. Our goal is to create more heroes inside the community itself who can go out there and take care of their own brothers and sisters. And that is the way we're gonna grow. That is the way we're gonna be, on the wealth part, where wealth would be equally divided among all the people who work hard in this country, and that has been the goal. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate being in the panel with these amazing people one more time, right? It has been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your remarks on racial equity and building wealth. And now we're going to move on to our next two speakers because they're going to provide us some information on mental health and issues of gun violence in our communities. The first speaker will be Lieutenant Colonel Ronald Taylor.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First, I want to speak mental health. It's a very complex and taboo subject that runs across every avenue of our daily life. Every community deals with mental health differently, but it's something that has to be addressed. We at the Office of the Sheriff try to enlighten, bring those issues to the community, let them know it's all right to talk about mental health. Mental health affects so many of us. Mental health has no certain face, color, creed, religion. Mental health affects the majority of our family members, but a lot of us choose not to address it. Mental health is something that can tear and is tearing our nation apart. We have to stay on top of this issue. We have to be in a place where we're leading the charge to give people the help, the information, and also embrace them in coming forth with this particular issue. We have to turn the page on looking a blind eye to mental health. Mental health also crosses the barriers into what we call violence. A lot of times when mental health is untreated, it leads to issues financially, it leads to issues faith-based, it leads to issues in violence that we see across America each and every day. A lot of that violence has to do with guns, which is horrifying. So we say at the Office of the Sheriff, we take a stance. We want to enlighten those. We want to bring the information out to the communities, give people a choice, give people a chance to be able to take hold to their lives, give them the tools, give them the resources to be able to make that change. Because if we don't, there's going to be a lot of unnecessary hardship that will continue to go on in this country. And I'll say that and turn it over to my colleague, Major Carr, and his viewpoints from his aspect.
So I'm definitely glad to be here today, and I'm glad that we have this panel. This panel pretty much breaks it down from faith-based to social and economic, financial from that standpoint. And coming from the law enforcement standpoint, when we look at mental health, I mean, it's not only just generational, it's not only social economic, it deals with everybody. It has no face, as Colonel Terry was saying, and it touches everybody. But you look at certain communities deal with mental health completely different. You have those communities that what goes on in our house stays in our house. We don't want to talk about it, it's taboo. We'll address it, we'll deal with it. You have those communities that will go out, they will talk about it, but they don't have the resources or the knowledge or information to actually understand exactly the person's diagnosis. We've seen an uptake in active shooters where people have actually gone to schools. There have actually been violence in the home. And this is dealing with weapons and mental health. Those aspects of people who have not been diagnosed, or people who we say, or we stigma, or we have some type of stereotype, to this person to say, well, this person isn't right. Something's wrong with this person. But we haven't looked to see what resources we can provide for that person. At the Sheriff's Office, we try to touch those people. We have what we call Emergency Petition Services, what we call EPS, where we actually take these people and we take them to a clinical technician or some sort of doctor at a hospital here in Prince George's County so they can be diagnosed, so they can be evaluated. The state of Maryland has also passed legislation, what we call the Extreme Risk Protective Order. And this Extreme Risk Protective Order is to remove any firearms that may be accessible by those people who may be deemed as having mental health issues. We don't want to label anybody as far as, hey, this person has a mental health issue. We want to bring this out into light to say that, hey, if you have an issue, seek the resources, look for the information. And from a law enforcement standpoint, we want to try to provide that information for these people. We want to include them into our communities and let them know that it is okay. Let them know that if you are having some issues that you could speak to somebody and it's something that you can do, instead of keeping it to themselves and acting out in violence. From the law enforcement standpoint, we must treat everybody the same. We must look at everybody the same. I have no idea, just based off of somebody's looks, appearance, that they have a mental issue. We send our officers or our deputies to special training to sympathize, to show some sort of empathy to these people, to understand if somebody is schizophrenic, how this person may be reacting, how this person may act. You wouldn't treat somebody as a criminal because they're actually going through something. They're actually speaking out, or they're trying to seek some assistance. We want to make sure that we're able to identify those triggers or those signs and actually provide them help. And that would be it for my.
Thank you very much, Major Carr. We appreciate your words of wisdom. In fact, we realize the problems of violence in our neighborhood is so important. So we're very privileged that both of you are working in our communities to improve these situations. And now we're going to go to our next speaker, who's Dr. Bland Lawrence, and he's going to share his words of wisdom for us.
I want to reiterate, I am absolutely thrilled. Sit back a little tiny bit so I can see my colleagues.
Okay.
Many of you in the viewing audience, and this is going out to thousands of people all over the world, and it's essentially important that they know people like Minister Jefferson, Mr. G, and yourselves. Mr. Terry didn't get his stripes the easy way. He worked hard for that. And I got to say this about him because I know him. He's a real people person. People see the police officer and the badge, and there's the negative connotation because of what's happened in the past. And I can attest to how he works with people. I myself had a very tragic situation as I lost a daughter of mine in police custody. And that was the other Bland in New Jersey, the two. One in New Jersey, one in Texas. So we know what parents go through, and we try to deal with my primary issues that solve some of the problems. I've got a particular question for the both of you. We know that mental health and economic wellness are inextricably tied together. The self-sufficiency of a community to be more financially literate is tied together. What is the department doing today in being able to vet out some of the bad officers? There's only a handful. You may have 2,000 officers, wherever it might be, anywhere in the country. But you get that 1% that creates the biggest problem and the worst images about law enforcement. Law enforcement is not an easy task today, and thank God that we have the cameras for each of the officers today, and it's mandatory that they use these cameras. It vets out those lies that may come from the perpetrator or from the officer. Is there counseling now for the police officers within the sheriff's department? I've said this in prior meetings, but I think, this is my own belief, that every 5 years, I believe, for a career officer, that officer should be reviewed in terms of their capacity to provide that service. Being a law officer is a very, very difficult process. You don't know who's coming from behind the bush in the building. When you pull someone over for a stop for a minor infraction, as to whether they're going to pull a revolver on you. But that small percentage of abusive officers, and you can always see most often when someone is getting to that point, but if we do nothing, we exacerbate the problem. And the second question, is the courts doing anything substantive to assist families when these mothers in particular, not just the fathers, but the mothers want aid and support for their child, their son or daughter who's bipolar. And they want you, they're begging the department, they're begging the court, find a solution for them because the mothers can't handle it. And we look at the recidivism rate today, that's too high. We're the only country in the world with close to 2 million incarcerees. And it doesn't make sense. We're a great people, and what creates a circumstance? But I know the influence of many accidents or things that occur in the course of doing your job has a lot to do with TV and what they see in the movies. It's smart to talk back to an officer, give an officer a hard time. They tend to forget that the officers themselves are also human. And why do you have to push that negative button in my face? Why can't you respect me for the job that I've got now in this instance? Well, something has to happen in the training process. of the officer, because he becomes what? The psychologist? He's the social expert. And he doesn't have to know anything about psychiatry, but he picks up the role and responsibility of what has to happen to resolve an issue before it exacerbates itself. I know that's a long-winded question because it's in 4 pieces, but between the two of you, especially you, please respond.
I'll take the first part being the process of hiring officers or deputies. Our process is painstaking. Out of 1,000 applicants, you may get 1 deputy. The process encompasses background checks. It also goes through a mental evaluation period. It looks through criminal history. It looks at drug use. It also, in some aspects, looks at common sense. See, a lot of things in police work or law enforcement, it's right and wrong, but a lot of it has to do with common sense. Communicating, be able to communicate with your fellow man or woman. That's most important for the office of the sheriff. Anybody can try to put on a badge and gun and enforce. But it takes that special individual to communicate with one's community. Be invested. We look for deputies who are invested in the community, not just taking from the community. See, that's very important when you look at law enforcement. You know, if you're not tied to that community, you have no affiliation with that community, the empathy for those who are in that community is very little. So from the aspect of the office of the sheriff, we look for all of those characteristics. We look for those men and women who want to serve for the right reason. And see, the right reason is serving your fellow man and woman, not for self, but for others. See, when you get into law enforcement for self, you talk about those who turn a blind eye, that's what happens. Because they're not serving others, they're serving self. And just like you doing anything else, when you start being self-serving, you don't look at the total picture of helping one another. So in that aspect, as far as the process, there is a lengthy process, but the bottom line, you have to want to serve those in your community and be convicted in such a manner that you don't lose sight of what's right and what's wrong. Because you're being put in a lot of situations that you're the only deterrent from what's right and what's wrong.
Absolutely.
And if you don't stay the course, then how can others stay the course? Because you are that guiding light. No matter how you may see it, no matter if you're being ridiculed or being talked about, you still represent something higher than yourself. That means that you must stay the course. I've been in law enforcement over 30 years now. And I have to take that to work each and every day and not lose sight of why I'm there. Not lose sight of why the citizens of my county, Prince George's County, has entrusted me to guard them each and every day. To entrust me to make sure that their family members, sons and daughters, aunts, uncles, mothers, and fathers are treated with respect and dignity every time we go out to do our particular job. So, in summary, Dr. Bland.
Well, don't want you to get away because you got some other questions. What about diversity in the department? Men and women, opportunities for growth, and what future it holds for us as Black Americans in this country?
At the office of the sheriff,
Yes.
and that's what I speak of, and that's what I know. Diversity over the last 10 years have been tremendous. We've hired numerous women, Hispanics, Black, people of all nationalities have been coming to the office of sheriff to participate. Because you have to change because of the diversity that's in the community. The community has to somewhat adapt to those who are entrusted to guard them if you don't change your organization. So your organization has to take on some of the characteristics of your community to be able to relate, to be able to talk, to be able to have those conversations with those that you serve. Doesn't mean that has to be an end-all be-all, but that is a good foundation to start looking at those who you want to have invest in your community. Again, those who serve have to be invested in those they are in charge.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Major?
So I will piggyback off, and thank you, Dr. Bland, piggyback off of Colonel Terry, as far as the sheriff's office.
We gotta
Just-
get you.
just law enforcement as a whole. You see us with this uniform on, this badge, duty belt, and we're here, we're coming to do a job. But the uniform alone is just a costume if I don't have the trust of this community. If the agency does not mirror the community which it serves, then you're doing something wrong. So the agency itself is service, to protect and serve. And we harp on the simple fact of service. You're actually interacting with these people at their worst times, at a time of need. You are not to go there and to create even more of a problem or issue or incite, folks their situation. You are supposed to be there to de-escalate. When they see you, they should say, hey, this problem is getting ready to be solved, or somebody's here to help me. They should not fear
That's what
you.
it should be.
And right now, we have an issue as far as trust. We're looking at the generational gaps. In my 18 years of service, I've worked in the training department. I've actually was the commander of our internal affairs. A lot of that comes from self-monitoring. What we have in the sheriff's office and many law enforcement agencies is you have what they call early warning signs, and you're looking at these different officers from their use of force to their behavior, to their interactions, to, their reports in which they take on a day-to-day basis, to monitor them, to make sure that these people are okay. A lot of times we don't really think that officers may be going through PTSD. They are human.
And they are.
They are human, Who was to say that, hey, I'm going through a divorce right now and I have to go into work and I'm dealing with somebody in domestic violence? Who was to say that my child is sick and, I'm still trying to make extra money in order to provide for them, that when I come into work, I'm not going to take it out to somebody else? These are the things, as an agency, we need to watch for our own people, because when we go out and we serve our community, we need to make sure that that's their mindset, is to serve, and not to take out, and not to, make a situation worse. This year, unfortunately, officer suicides are on the rise. You hear on the news, and just recently, unfortunately, we lost an officer in Montgomery County due to a self-inflicted wound. We don't pay attention to the fact that we're asking these people to serve, but we also need to make sure that they're taken care of as well. It's a symbiotic relationship that we must have with our community. And if we want to be law enforcement and we want to, to serve our community, we need to listen to our community. I need to understand and address any issues that you may have. But first and foremost, I need to listen. When I respond to a scene, I need to listen. I need to hear exactly what goes on. We talk about command presence, but the issue is I need to know what's going on besides the text of this call in which I get on a radio, on my my computer system. I need to understand who are the individuals who I'm dealing with. They're much more than just what this person said on the telephone. I need to assess the situation and then be there to show empathy and de-escalate the situation. So law enforcement as a whole, we're trying to make some changes. We are having some trouble as far as recruiting, because now you're looking at the generational gaps. If you look at some of the generational gaps, a lot of the younger or the youth have issues communicating. They're used to communicating through text. They're used to emails. They're not used to going to a door, speaking to someone, looking at them in their eyes, and assessing the situation. We've had situations to where people who have actually gone into the academy aren't used to the stress levels of being in the academy. Where if they're not used to the stress levels of being in the academy, how can I put you in a stress level on that street? You need to understand exactly that this is, unfortunately, life and death situations that we deal with. You know, I'm the deputy chief of our field operations, where we have warrants, child support, domestic violence. A lot of our stuff is court issue. When we go there, we pretty much know what the courts have told us what we had to do. You know, when we do evictions, nobody takes joy in having to remove somebody from their home. You know, we try to make sure that, hey, is there any other way that we can wind up doing this but still following the law? Because we don't get a chance to choose. We can't pick and choose when we follow the law. A judge just now said, I need to carry this out. But how can I show up?
What about immigrants? A language barrier, being unable to communicate oftentimes. They're honest people, and they're fearful of any form of law enforcement because of where they come from in the past, looking to migrate here. How do you deal with that? That is such a major issue in the killing of, you know what, it keeps in my mind so many of those cases, as an example in New York, where the officers jumped on this guy because he's selling a cigarette, a little Lucy. How do you put chokehold on somebody for that? I mean, that just upsets I get upset every time I think of it. So I try to be clear, but we all do. I mean, that's part of it.
It comes
But when
back.
I see what happens to the immigrants, I recall, and this is not too long ago, immigrant, she was there with the children, 4 children, Hispanic, didn't speak much English, and the sheriff's department knocked on the door. In fact, you know the officer, I will talk later, you know. But she peed all over herself. She was that fearful. Nerves. And, traumatized by it. Anything can happen in those situations. Is the department demanding or offering to the officers language skills where they can learn to speak Spanish, or speak a little Chinese, Mandarin, or something that might...
It goes into training. A lot of the things that happen, and what you just talked about, training. Officers, deputies, law enforcement have to constantly train, have to be trained. Because once you stop learning, that's when you stop growing. And when I speak of that, you start growing in the fact of not knowing how to treat others.
Yeah.
Because if you're the only person that you know, you're going to treat somebody in the same fashion. But there are other people in this world that you now have to train to be able to talk with, to be able to interact with. By me putting my hand out to a person who is like me, they may receive that as friendship. But somebody of another culture, if I put my hand out that way, may think I'm about to fight them. So it's about knowing who you're dealing with, having training being put in place to aid the deputies, aid the officers, aid law enforcement to be more knowledgeable, to be more compassionate in who they're dealing with. When you speak of immigrants, immigrants are only people who may act or speak differently than you are. That's it. They still deserve respect. They still deserve to be treated equally. They still deserve to be heard. We have to, in law enforcement, adapt to those things. And it's about constantly training and evolving our deputies and law enforcement officers to do such. So that's when I speak of training in order to be able to do a better job at serving, because they are part of the community. They are a citizen. They are the persons that we are entrusted to serve and protect. So we must be able to give them the same privileges, the same courtesies, the same respect in how we go about doing our job. I look at officers and what we stress at the office of the sheriff, especially through Major Carr and his divisions. Our biggest weapon, people, they say, oh yeah, your biggest weapon, you got a gun. No, the biggest weapon any law enforcement person has is your mouth. Being able to communicate with people. That can get you in and out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Your mouth can put you in a lot of trouble, and your mouth can get you out of a lot of trouble if you know how to communicate with people. So we must stress, communication is the key when we're dealing with the community.
I have one question. I have one question to that is Chief. The largest population we have today, growing, is senior citizen population. They are the most vandalized and taken advantage of population than any of the population. Are the officers being trained to be more sensitive in dealing with the needs of that community? Alzheimer's sets in, schizophrenia sets in, going back to Minister Jefferson. Dementia. These things become realities. I live amongst them, so I know what that is based on my age. And they need help, we need help on a continual basis and more tolerance for our foolishness. As you know, oftentimes a senior will dial 911 because they thought they saw someone in the closet, or they thought someone was sitting in the living room when they're in the bedroom. And you come and you guys do a great job. Fire department likewise, they'll pull that chain accordingly. What's being done to ensure better protections and egress in and out of the buildings they come in, or provide social assistance? Not that the department has to become socialist, but when you have them there and they commit these infractions, Major, maybe you in your division, you can clarify that a little better.
Yes, so, and it goes both ways to your first question. It's about information, it's about knowledge and community outreach.
Okay.
So for our seniors, we really need to have more community outreach. And we actually have a group that goes out and speaks to the seniors on a consistent basis. Yes, matter of fact, and Colonel Terry has that's under his group in which they go and they speak to seniors and they talk to seniors. We even had before, we had a triad program, which would actually go out and work with the seniors at the senior assisted living homes. And it's about information, letting them know exactly what resources are out there and assisting them with that. As technology continues to grow, you have to look at, hey, is everybody on board with that?
Yeah.
We talk about the language barriers. It's our job as a department to make sure that we have people who can actually speak and actually make sure, speak that language and make sure they actually are able to provide assistance for those folks. We can't leave anybody behind. Our agency, again, has to mirror our community. And with our communication that we have with everybody, that's how we develop our trust. That's how we put people at ease to say that, hey, I'm familiar with this deputy. I'm familiar with this law enforcement officer. They seem to be nice. They're out in the community.
Yeah.
It should never be the only time you come into contact with law enforcement is when you have an issue. If that's the case, then we're doing our job wrong. You should see us with a consistent basis. You should talk to us with a consistent basis. Not that something has to be wrong, but I'm part of this community too. I live in the place that I serve. So you see me, I will be at a shopping mall, I will go someplace. My kids grew up there. So we have to make sure that we're more inclusive in what we have. Now, as immigrants come into our community, they have those fears. There is a cultural divide, right now as far as the Hispanic community, ICE, with the federal agencies. We're local. We have to be mindful of that. So when we do try to go speak to somebody, we have to let them know and try to put them at ease. Again, Colonel Terry made mention to it. Your mouth and being able to communicate is your biggest weapon, it's your biggest tool that you actually have. Because the biggest thing is, when we look at economics, and we're here in Washington, D.C. right now. If a law enforcement officer were to get a call in Capitol Hill, will he still treat that person in Capitol Hill the same way if he were to go to Southeast Washington, D.C.?
Right.
You know, as law enforcement officers, it's our job to make sure that we treat everybody the same. It shouldn't make a difference about your zip code. It shouldn't make a difference about how big your wallet is. It shouldn't make a difference about, you know, your education. It should only be about what you need from us in our service and our communication and our ability to work together.
Hey,
So the question that I have,
Yes, Dr. Gary?
yeah,
Yes,
so
we
we talk
were
about
going-
trust, we talk about fear, right? And just wanted to like kind of piggyback on what Dr. Plant said earlier. I came to this country when I was 18 years old as a new immigrant. And when I came in here, I was told the same thing that everybody tells, like, hey, you know, we don't like cops. We don't like police officers. They are bad people. That's the image it was portrayed to me. Okay, I'm being very honest with you. Then the whole perspective actually changed when one of my friends actually became an officer in Fairfax County. And he came with a uniform and he shook my hand, he gave me a hug, right? Then I kind of realized, and I had that paradigm shift at that point that like, wow, these are exactly people like me. This guy used to play with me, work with me, and now he's an officer. And that kind of like took fear away from me, you know. So my question to you is, we talk about senior citizens, we talk about immigrants, but what are you guys are doing in terms of like the young kids? Because the young kids, they are very active in social media nowadays. And social media, when we talk about it, it only portrays the bad part, you know. And yes, there are like a couple of good videos that I see, like officer doing the great thing. Like one of the videos that I can tell you right now is one of the, if the kids, young kids have that fear from the beginning, then it's going to be very hard for you to recruit because they're not going to be a police officer when they grow up. And also it's going to be very hard for you to get that trust factor. And the fear is always going to be there. It doesn't matter if they're a new immigrant, they've been here, because the kids are the future. So what are you guys doing in your service department that is reaching out to these kids? Because when I talk to 10 kids, I can promise you, 8 kids will say, I don't like police officer. So what is your response to that? That's my question to you, okay?
I'm glad
So,
you asked.
what we want to do is get ready to wrap up, so we definitely want you to apply to that, and then we're gonna open it up for questions from the audience, so please.
I'll reply. The Bureau of Court Services, which I'm in charge to lead, we have what we call community partnerships. We're in the middle schools. At this particular time, we're in 16 of 24 middle schools in Prince George's County. It is very imperative that we do that. Under the leadership of Sheriff Hyde, children are our future. We have to enable the youth to be all they can be. We can't wait until they're in high school to start talking to them. We have to reach them at the youngest age possible to start that foundation, to let them know that when you see an officer, it's all right. But through our program, it's so much more. We want to embody the total let them know that anything they want to achieve is achievable. So you have to allow them to be in an environment to feel that way. So in those particular classes that we lead, that is our structure. Our structure is to embody those particular and enhance those particular young people with the knowledge, with the self-righteousness to go and do what they need to do. We have them in our court systems. It hurts my heart when I see young people coming to the courthouse each and every day incarcerated. Because that's one less youth that could be productive and have a bright future. We want to help them grow. So at the Office of the Sheriff, our community partnerships is about that. It also encompasses, Dr. Glenn asked about it, senior citizens. Because coming and going. Coming to this world as a young person,